Just kidding.
لتحصلوا على الملايين ليس لكم إلا المحامي لورنس قاجي، خبرة طويلة في الإصابات وحوادث السقوط والسيارات، يتحدثون لغتكم، يحاربون من أجلكم. المحامي لورنس قاجي، الاستشارات مجانية ولا يستلمون أتعابهم إلا بعد إكمال القضية. زوروهم على 10000 West 9 Mile Road Suite 1400 Southfield. اتصلوا على المحامي لورنس قاجي 248-702-6641 248-702-6641.
أعزائي المستمعين، أهلا وسهلا بكم وبرنامج المحامي لورنس قاجي من قاجي لو فيرم. معي في الاستوديو المحامي لورنس قاجي. Welcome, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you, Sahar, for having us. How are you doing today?
I'm very good.
Good.
Welcome, Mr. Shrodder.
Thank you so much for having us. Always a pleasure.
وأهلا وسهلا بالعزيزة الباراليغال الأخت العزيزة تمارا للترجمة. طبعا
أهلا وسهلا.
طبعا شوية صوتك عندي.
أهلا وسهلا.
إيه هسه مستمعينا، طبعا احنا كل حلقة كل يوم خميس نتحدث في موضوع معين. في بعض الأحيان ما نكمل الموضوع، نكمله بأسبوع الوراء. احنا صار أسبوعين في نفس الموضوع، اليوم بدنا نكمل الموضوع أيضا. تمام بالضبط. فموضوعنا طبعا ما هو موضوعنا؟
موضوعنا من الأسبوع الماضي بأنه كنا نتكلم على بأنه شنو أحسن طريقة أو الطرق اللي لازم نستخدمها حتى نحصل أكبر مبلغ للقضية اللي
واحد من يوقع
مو بس من يوقع، حتى حوادث سيارات.
حوادث سيارات طبعا احتياطي.
أي يعني
أي حادث أي إصابة.
Yes. So we are going to continue this week talking about for the car accident maximizing the case,
the value of your case
for every case. Yes.
Yeah, we mentioned last week we never know how long a topic is going to take.
Yes.
Right? Some topics we fly through pretty fast.
Yes.
This one,
years, right?
yeah, this one seems to be a longer topic. Obviously, it's a very important topic, right? These are all civil cases, and it comes down to money. And we're discussing how to maximize the value of your case and get the most money in your pocket, essentially.
Yes. مثل ما تفضلنا الأسبوع الماضي بأنه مرات نحكي على موضوع، نتكلم على موضوع نخلصه بربع ساعة، ومرات ما نعرف الموضوع يبقى أسبوعين أو ثلاثة ما يكفي. فراح نكمل مثل ما قلت موضوعنا بأنه كيف ناخذ الحد الأقصى القضية حوادث السيارات أو أي يعني أي قضية، شلون واحد يقدر يسوي يمشي بالطرق الصحيحة حتى يحصل المبلغ الأقصى للضرر اللي هو صار به.
So before we continue, I just want to mention something that I didn't talk about last week. So value is obviously what would I say, a sensitive subject, or something that obviously we have to talk about our clients with, right? Whether we're comfortable with it or not, it's something that we have to discuss with our clients. And it's a touchy subject for me because most clients, most of them, don't know what their case is worth, don't know the value of their case. And this is where the trust in your lawyer comes in, right? If you trust your lawyer, you'll agree on what the value of your case is if he or she tells you what the value of your case is. If you don't trust your lawyer, they can tell you any value and it's not going to go anywhere because you don't know what your case is worth. Your case could be worth way more money than you think it's worth. It could be worth way less money than you think it's worth. So a layperson, in my opinion, usually doesn't know what their case is worth. I've seen cases where they think their case is worth X amount, but it's really worth way less. I've seen also cases where they're fine with an amount and it's worth 10 times more than that.
You value it.
Yes.
Very true.
Right.
واحدة من المواضيع الجدا حساسة اللي هي يعني بنطاق الشغل مالتنا
نعم.
هو المبالغ اللي لازم نتكلمها مع المحامي، مع الزبون.
نعم.
وهذا السبجكت هذا فشي كلش حساس.
نعم.
هواية وأكثر شيء 99% من الزبائن يجون كل واحد يتوقع هو ضرره أكبر شيء واكثر شيء، فيكون هذا الكلام جدا لازم نكون ندير بالنا. كل شيء اللي نقوله كله مثبت.
نعم.
تقارير طبيه ومستندات وتقارير مال شرطه، اذا اكو فيديوهات او
نعم.
صور، هاي كلها تثبت بانه هاي ايش قد يستاهل الموضوع. هوايه ناس مرات نقول لهم بالأخير مثلا القضية مالتكم تستاهل هذا المبلغ، وهم يتوقعون لا هواية أكثر، وأكو لا بالمقلوب بالعكس يتوقعون أقل أو يقبلون بالموجود، بس هي قضيتهم 3 أضعاف تستاهل أكثر. يعتمد كله على التقارير الطبية، على العلاجات، على التقارير الشرطة، على الصور، على كل شيء يعتمد.
If any of the listeners have a settlement offer and they want a second opinion, feel free to reach out to us. It's absolutely free. I'll talk to you about what what the adjuster's offering you, and if I think that's worthwhile, or if I think you should reject it.
أوكي. مثل ما تفضل المحامي لورنس، قال إذا أي أحد عنده تسوية وما مقتنع بالتسوية أو عنده أي سؤال يقدر يتصل على المكتب مالتنا وياخذ يعني فكرة ثانية من محامي ثاني، ونقدر ننطي نصيحة.
نعم.
واحتمال مرات هم ما نقدر ننطي نصيحة، يعني يعتمد.
نعم.
بالضبط. اللي عنده أي سؤال خليه يتصل بينا على المكتب. 248-702-6641.
And Lawrence, actually, I want to piggyback on something you just said, which was, sometimes people think their case is worth one thing, and it's really not. It's worth something totally different. This has happened a couple times in our office where people have settled their cases before they came to us, or at least a portion of their case. Recently I saw a case come into the office and it settled for less than $5,000. And before I knew that it was settled, I mean, I had evaluated it as, tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh.
But there was nothing that we could do because
it was already settled.
The client had already settled it on her own with the insurance company before talking to a lawyer. And, there was nothing I could do. But on the flip side, I have another story, and this was years ago, but I had a client. This was a property damage case. This wasn't a motor vehicle accident case, but a client of mine who I'd never met or talked to because the case was transferred over to me from another attorney, had a fire. And I looked through all the documents. I looked through the basically the evaluations from the public adjusters and all this interesting stuff. And I looked at it and I said, this looks like there's about $40,000 worth of damage. I wonder why the insurance isn't paying this. So I called up the client and I said, hey, I reviewed your case. I wanted to get a chance to talk to you. What are you looking for in this? Expecting him to say something around $40,000, and the first thing out of his mouth was, I want $1 million. And I was like, $1 million? Your policy is maxed out at 500,000. If I don't know,
he surprised you.
If the whole building had been destroyed and it was worth that much,
with only 40,000 in damage.
Right, and I was like, So to your point, it's really interesting because you may think it's worth one thing and it may be worth a lot more.
Yeah.
Or it could be worth a lot less, and I think it's good to have an open dialogue.
More than $1 million?
I don't know, but it's good to have that open dialogue with your attorney.
Like the issue becomes when someone that's never dealt with this before,
right?
They get an offer for $30,000. Wow, that seems like a ton of money.
Yes.
Well, your case may be worth $300,000, and you just don't know,
or it might not.
It might not.
Right? Who knows?
طبعا اي واحد عنده سؤال استفسار الحلقة منقولة لايف على صفحة إذاعة صوت الغد، أيضا منقولة على اليوتيوب. الأرقام موجودة على الصفحة 586-825-2015. أي واحد إذا عنده أي سؤال عن أي شغلة، إذا يريد يفتح كيس قديم، إذا كلها يقدر يتصل بالمحامي لورنس قاجي على 248-702-6641. يس سوري.
لا مثل ما تفضلوا المحامي، المبلغ
نعم.
اللي نسوي به تسوية وصايرة عندنا بالشغل بالمكتب نفسه، يعني قبل شهر اجتنا قضية يعني المبلغ مالتها يكون التسوية مالتها عالي، الأضرار كبيرة، ومن بدينا دزينا الرسائل بأنه احنا مخولين لهذا القضية. الانشورنس اساسا رجع قال الزبونه مالتكم واخذت سوت تسويه ويانا قبل ما تجينا، انطاها بس 4000 وهي بالضبط احنا بس باوعنا الكيس احتمال احنا بنباعها بالبدايه يعني
قدروا في الشيء
قدر بالضبط على الصور، على البوليس ريبورت شي يقول اللي هي الاضرار الجسديه، واحد هيك يعني يقيمها، بس 4000 it was nothing بالضبط. yes. واكو بالعكس الانشورنس ما تدفع، تباوع بالقضيه احتمال بها 40,000 لو something وهو لا يريد مليون.
هاي الحكايه يعني
بالضبط
محامي شرودر
بالضبط لسه قالها. هم لا هم غلط هم ما يصير
شنو مليون
بالضبط. يعتمد كله على شلون يعني لازم يعني واحد يوازنها.
You just got to have trust in your lawyer. And you know, this, unfortunately, there are some lawyers out there that, undervalue cases, and just gotta be careful, and you got to trust your lawyer. That's
واهم شيء اهم شيء تكون الثقة بين الزبون والمحامي. اهم شيء بانه يكون الزبون يحكي الحقيقة للمحامي
حتى لأنه يثق به.
كل شيء يحكي الحقيقة، بس يضمون أي شيء القضية كلها تروح. إيش قد نشتغل عليها وإيش قد نتعب إذا أكو شيء إحنا ما نعرفه، لأنه الإنشورنس كل شيء راح يعرف.
صح، لأنه ما يريد يخسر.
بالضبط.
So let's recap what we spoke about last week, and then we can just dive right into the next two topics of the value of your case. So tomorrow, if you remember, last week we went over establishing the amount that you can essentially go after, right?
The policy max.
Policy max. We're looking at assets if it's a business, any umbrella policies, things of that nature, to see what money is out there that we can actually grab onto.
Right.
بالضبط. مثل ما تفضلنا الأسبوع الماضي تكلمنا بأنه الخطوات اللي إحنا شلون نقدر أو نقيم القضية. أول شيء نشوف البوليسي إيش قد الحد الأعلى مالتها. دائما نطلب الحد الأعلى دائما. هذا فشي ما إلى أي
يعني هاي في مكتبكم
في مكتبنا دائما نطلب الحد الأعلى، حتى لو هي توصل 5,000 وهو عنده 100,000 احنا نطلب الحد الأعلى حتى نقدر ناخذ حتى أعلى شيء هم يقدرون ينطونا إياه.
راسا تأخذون السقف.
بالضبط. الشغلة الثانية بأنه إذا أنت عندك محل تشوف شنو إيش قد يسوى المحل. همينا حتى من تسوي الباليسي مالتك تسوي على قدر المحل إيش قد يسوى.
صحيح.
إذا عندك تشوف إذا المتضرر السبب الضرر إذا كان عنده مو بس الانشورنس مالته، عنده امبريلا انشورنس اللي هي انشورنس الأكبر اللي تغطي تغطية كاملة
حتى مع الانشورنس
اللي هي تغطية إضافية إلى الانشورنس مال السيارة والانشورنس الصحي.
And just as a recap, we also briefly discussed the concept of trying to collect when there isn't an insurance policy, and that it's very problematic and costly, and
collecting against
an individual is frequently problematic, which is why we're looking at what the policies have available.
وهم تكلمنا إذا الشخص ما كان عنده أي انشورنس اللي سبب الضرر، وشلون تكلمنا شلون كل الصعبة بأنه ناخذ من عنده مصاريف مال الضرر، رأسا يقدر يطلع الإفلاس مالته، يسوي إفلاس وما تقدر تحصل أي شيء.
And probably the saddest thing in my business that I encounter is when I sign up a client that has traumatic injuries. I mean, very, very bad injuries, hospital long periods of time, and then you end up getting the bodily injury policy, the other driver's policy, the deck page, and you see a $100,000 policy.
Yes.
And that's all they
That
can
is
get.
devastating.
That's all they can get. And this has happened. I've seen hundreds of these cases, and it's unfortunate that there isn't much more out there that you can grab.
But you can protect yourself by purchasing
Absolutely
the uninsured and underinsured policies,
point.
and that's a super important thing that people need to
absolutely.
اكو مرات اشياء مو بايدنا. اذا المسبب الحادث الباليسي مالته جدا قليله والشخص هو اضراره جدا عاليه ومتاذي بشكل جدا كبير وعنده تغطيه بس 100,000، ما تكفي 100,000 للتغطيه مع الاسف. فدائما نطلب من المستمعين وننصح بانه تشترون uninsured underinsured اعلى الى 250 او اكثر 500 حتى تكون يعني متغطي كل شيء.
تغطي الاضرار اللي انت
بالضبط.
وقاعد بيها او
بالضبط.
الشغلات اللي متاذي بيها.
Exactly. In the case that the other driver has a small policy, you can get yourself covered by purchasing uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage.
Especially motorcycles.
Yes.
خاصة أهل الماطورات.
بهاي الفترة خصوصا هذا الوقت يعني.
فشي فظيع نشوف.
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we've signed up a lot of motorcycle cases this summer that have very, very, very bad injuries, and there's been a couple with smaller policies, and it just
and their coverage is dependent upon the other vehicle instead of their own.
Exactly.
Which
their PIP coverage.
which makes it complicated.
بالضبط. يعني احنا أنا صار لي فترة جدا طويلة بهذا بالشغل المجال مالتي. هاي أول صيف أشوف هالقد حوادث ماطورات وكبيرة جدا.
نعم.
مميتة مع الأسف.
موتي أكثرها موت.
I think I'll probably stick with my snowmobiling for the winter time. Even I know it's dangerous too. So
I was gonna say I don't know if that's much safer, my friend.
So I go snowmobiling every winter. Me and a few of my buddies have a cabin that we rent up north. So and tomorrow every year it gives me a lecture about going up there.
This year you will not.
كل ما يروح الأسبوع اللي يروح به يسوي سنوموبيل لورنس لأنه عنده أطفال ألزمة. أقول له دير بالك. أقول
every time
صلي له يعني إلى أن يرجع.
أتخوف يعني أنا عندي 3 أولاد وأنا كلش أخاف.
صحيح.
يعني هذا كل أهل هذا مالتهم
همهم
هذا الهم والنايت مير.
يس.
بأنه أي شيء يصير على أطفالك. صح؟
تعرفين شيء صعبة؟
كل الصعبة. وأنت تعرف أستاذ ساهر. أنت بالضبط عندك أولاد وأحفاد بعدهم من كبار ما شاء الله.
تخوفي.
Yes. So
one thing I can mention is a lot of the bad accident cases that I see are, usually when they're driving by themselves. It seems to be a little bit safer when they're traveling in groups, although I've had cases where there's been a motorcycle versus motorcycle within the same group crash. But generally speaking, I do think it's a little bit safer, not much safer, but a little bit safer to ride in groups as opposed to riding by yourself.
I think it's mostly because drivers don't try to go around them, or they don't try to go around drivers as much. Because I've seen a lot of situations, and I'm sure
the
a lot
motorcyclist
of
is not
trying. Group motorcycles is better.
Well, they don't.
Or it's more dangerous.
هو هم dangerous بس شوية أقل لأنه يأخذون مكان سيارة وما يحاولون
ما يتقرب.
مو بس ما يتقرب. هواية موتورسيكلات تحاول تسبق السيارة. سابق السيارات. ولو يمشي بين السيارات من هم بجروب يظلون سوا. بالضبط هي هاي اللي تخيل.
I think it's like anything else, right? Like if you're in a group of people, you're not likely to go 100 miles an hour and try and zip around a whole bunch of traffic because you're going to lose your group.
No, all will be the same, level.
So I mean, it's like anything else. But I mean, there's good drivers and bad drivers for every type of vehicle.
Yeah.
This is not limited to motorcyclists. So.
Yeah. So the next thing we discussed was the car crash damage. Obviously, it does, from what I've seen, it does help get higher value when there is more damage to your vehicle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although it's not dispositive.
No.
Because obviously
None of these things are dispositive.
Right.
Everything that we're going
Exactly.
over is what I can see adds value to a case. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need every single one of these things
Yes.
to have a case.
Exactly.
Right.
And I always like to point out whenever someone talks about the damage on a vehicle, remember that vehicles are intended to take damage instead of the person. So sometimes you can have an accident where there's only a little bit of damage on the vehicle, and that means a lot of the force was transferred to the person.
Yeah.
So
مثل ما تفضلنا بأنه هاي النقاط اللي نقولها مو لازم تكون كلها موجودة. أكو قسم من عندها موجودة هم ما يخالف. نعتمد عمنا على أضرار السيارة. إذا أضرار السيارة كبيرة يعني ولو هسه صناعة السيارات تغيرت. صارت السيارة شوية أقوى وضربتها يعني مرات ضربة قوية بس هي ما تبين تروح على الشخص نفسه.
الشخص هو اللي يتأذى.
كل شيء بها يعني السلبي والإيجابي والكل شيء لازم بها تقارير ونشوف شنو هي.
Next thing we spoke about was the injuries that are caused by the accident that you can tell from the accident scene. Broken bones, things of that nature. Scars, exactly.
Yeah.
الشغلة الأخرى اللي نشوفها همنا من وراء حادث السيارة إذا أكو أي كسور بالعظام أو أي جرح كبير للجسم يحتاج خياطة أو حتى أكو مرات ما يحتاج خياطة خاصة أهل الماطور من يوقعون وجلدهم كله يحترق. هذا ما بخياطة بس هذا همنا كلش
هذا دامج
بالضبط. يعتمد على هاي الأشياء همنا.
And just to say real quickly, bruises, it doesn't have to be scars, right? Cuts, bruises, scrapes, really anything.
I just said scrapes because if you are on a motorcycle, usually you get a scrape.
The road rash, burns,
yes.
all can be useful.
من الairbag you get burns.
Yes.
يحترق وجه الإيدينات.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. But John, what if you don't have any broken bones, no scars, no bruises, but you're hurting? I mean, your back is hurting, you're stiff.
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is it can still count. So the way that the bodily injury statute in Michigan works is that you can either have a permanent and serious disfigurement, you could have death, or you could simply have what we call a threshold injury, and the threshold injury is, generally speaking, defined as the objective manifestation of an injury to an important body function which affects your ability to lead a normal life. So in layman's terms, it means that there's some doctor or outside person who can identify an injury, for example, on an MRI. And
so I was just going to ask, so if you can't see pain, right? So if I'm looking at you, I can't see the pain in your back.
Pain by itself is insufficient. Right.
How can you get through this threshold?
That's a great
without having a broken bone, a big scar on your forehead,
exactly,
things of that nature.
Yeah. So pain by itself is insufficient. If someone just says, "Hey, you know what? I was in a car accident and I'm in pain," by itself, that is not enough. But you can meet that threshold injury with pain by going to the doctor and saying, "Hey, doc, I've got pain in my neck. I've got pain in my back. My shoulders are killing me." Okay.
It's not shown to the people,
Right. You can't, because you can't see pain.
So the question is, if you don't have any broken bones, no scarring or anything like that,
you're still in
pain. How do you prove your case?
Yeah. Right. So and you can. The answer is absolutely you can. And what you do, like I said, you're going to the doctor and you're telling them this, and the doctor is going to do the following. He's going to make a note of everything you're telling him. Okay. And those are considered subjective complaints of pain. So you're still not there. But then most doctors, if you're still complaining of that pain in a few weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to say, we want to figure out what's going on. What's the source of this pain?
Something is going on, right? You shouldn't have pain for 3 months after an accident.
Yeah. I mean,
something's going on.
That's right. Most people will feel better in a week at most, right? If there's no real issues. So you're going to this doctor and he says, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to send you for an MRI. Okay. As one example, there are other diagnostic tests. There's EMGs, and I did an entire hour session here on this radio program several weeks back talking about all the different types of diagnostic tests. So I encourage the listeners to listen to that. But the bottom line is the doctor can suggest that you take these diagnostic tests, and those diagnostic tests will essentially show an image of your body and show what's injured. And all of a sudden, you have an objective diagnostic study that says, you know what? You know why your shoulder's hurting? Because we just identified you have a shoulder tear. You have a tear in your shoulder, or maybe you have a bulging disc or a herniated disc
from inside
your body that
yes,
you can't
it's not
see
shown
on
to-
the
yeah.
outside. Again, other things. Again, I encourage listeners to listen to our other radio shows. But there can be torn ligaments. There's all sorts of different tests that can reveal all sorts of different issues. Good luck translating all that.
I will, John.
I know. You're very good at it.
مثل ما قلنا بأنه حوادث السيارات بها مع الأسف الإنسان يتوفى. اكو قسم يتوفون.
نعم.
واكو قسم اضرار ظاهريه اللي هي مثل الكسر او الجروح او
مبينة.
الحروق او مبينه، واكو اضرار داخليه. اصعب شيء هي الاضرار الداخليه، لانه احنا حتى يكون انت عندك قضيه للعطل وضرر لازم نثبت بانه انت متضرر. ف الواحد يقول اني موجوع بس ما حد يعرف شنو الوجع اللي عنده،
الوجع مالته.
فتروح للطبيب تقول له انا رقبتي ظهري ماي شولدرز اكتافي توجعني ركباتي
مدى اتحمل
بالضبط. الطبيب كله يدونها ويسوي اذا ظل الالم يروح للعلاج. ورا العلاج يسوي تحاليل. التحاليل عدة تحاليل مختلفة، اكو تحاليل مال الاعصاب، اكو تحاليل مال الغضاريف، اكو تحاليل مال الاعظام، هواية اشياء. تسوي التحاليل. هاي التحاليل اللي راح تبين بانه انت عندك اشياء ايجابية، مثلا عندك تمزق او عندك
ايجابية للقضية.
احنا من نقول
للاثبات
بالطب دائما الاشياء الشغله الايجابيه يعني مو زينه. بالضبط. اي من التقرير يجي السلبي يعني كل شيء ما بيك. بالضبط، هذا زين. بس من عندك اشياء ايجابيه يطلع عندك،
يعني هذه تفيد القضيه، مو هذا
طبعا. طبعا هاي كلها تفيد القضايا، بانه انت عندك فتق بالفقرات، لو عندك تمزق، هاي كلها اكو بالاشعه، بالتصوير الطبقي، بالاشعه المتحركه. هاي شيء جديد همينه هسه اكو. هاي كلش مهمه.
هاي تبين كل شيء
بالضبط. لأنه حتى تحصل على العطل وضرر لازم تبين بأنه أنت حياتك تغيرت من قبل الحادث إلى وراء الحادث، وعندك تحاليل إيجابية بأنه أنت متضرر من وراء هذا الحادث.
So if any of the listeners have an accident and they don't have any broken bones or big scars or anything like that, don't be discouraged to call us. You still may have a case. I've actually had a lot of really, really good cases that didn't involve any broken bones, any scarring or anything like that. I can name two of them right off. Just pain. Off the top of my head, there was a couple that I had settled, no broken bones, no scarring, for over $1 million for both of them.
Wow.
So don't be discouraged. If you are feeling pain from an accident, give us a call. We can probably help you.
Yeah, and it does have to affect their life in some way, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's going to be.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, the pain and suffering part of the case we're going to discuss. We're still recapping last week.
That's
مثل ما تفضلوا بأنه رجاء إذا أي أحد كان بحادث سيارة وما عنده يعني أضرار يعني
مبينة،
إذا ما عنده أضرار ظاهرة، عنده بس أضرار داخلية، مو يقول أنا ما عندي قضية. خليه يجي، خليه يشوف، احتمال عنده قضية. هواية يصير عندهم تمزق بدون ما يدرون. أكو هواية ناس مالتهم الوجع واحد شخص عن شخص يختلف همينه. واحد يتحمل وواحد ما يتحمل. بالضبط. دائما راجع طبيب وشوف شنو اللي نقدر احنا، وتفضل يمنا نقدر احنا نشوف لك اياها.
نعم.
So where we stopped at last week, we're already halfway through the show. Great. Where we stopped at last week was, John, we're talking before the show, and I my opinion, this is, if I had to pick one thing that maximizes the value out of all the things we're going to discuss
Yes.
last week and this week.
But one of them.
If I can pick one thing and you tell me, Lawrence, pick one thing that's going to maximize the value of my case, the top thing,
What is
in my
it?
opinion, from my statistics, I show that the medical treatment after an accident brings the most value to your case.
Starting with the hospital and not ending there.
Exactly.
بالنسبة للمحامي لورنس يقول من خبرتي ومن نجاحي وإلى وين أنا هسه وصلت، أهم شيء للقضية حتى تسوي حتى تحصل أكبر مبلغ للقضية بأنه هو العلاج الصحي اللي بعد الحادث. مو فقط تروح للمستشفى وتوقف، لو تروح شهر وشهرين وتوقف. العلاج المستمر الصحي بالضبط أكو دائمي.
So, hey, Lawrence, I'm going to ask you a question now. You asked me one earlier.
Oh, you will ask him?
I'm going to ask Lawrence a question. So, sometimes we encounter the situation where someone goes to the hospital, right?
Yep.
And they have their own doctor, which is fine. Okay. But they go to their primary care doctor and they say, man, I'm in pain. But they never mention the motor vehicle accident. They go back to their doctor month after month. But they never mention to their doctor they were in a motor vehicle accident. What do you think about that?
And, I see this oftentimes with doctors that don't treat auto injury
On a regular
patients on a regular basis. It's I'm not really sure exactly how to explain it, but it is sort of different. The treating the auto patients, obviously there's different billing, there's different mechanisms and things of that nature. What I think is going to happen is you're going to have a really, really hard time with your case, because when the insurance company reviews the records, they're not going to see an accident anywhere. They're going to see that you have back pain. Back pain from what? How they can just fill in the blanks in their head, and it's not going to be good.
Right. I mean, and this is the thing, because people age, right? Every one of us gets older every day. I'm sorry. This is breaking news. I know, but it's happening to all of us.
Are you sure about that?
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I'm not a scientist, I'll acknowledge, but I'm pretty sure we're all getting a day older every day. Very disappointing, I know. But the point is, as we get older, right? As we just live through life, unfortunately, it doesn't usually get easier, right? It gets harder. Your back is a little worse. Your neck is a little worse. You wake up in your 30s and all of a sudden you're like, why am I in pain? All I did was go to sleep, right?
70, 60, 70.
There's that too, right? And it doesn't get easier. And I think the point is that an insurance company, if it's not stated to your doctor, if you're not telling your doctor, I was in a motor vehicle accident and this is part of the reason or the reason why I'm all of a sudden in more pain, an insurance company is going to say, well, wait a minute. How do we know it's related to an accident? We think it's because you're getting older, or we think it's from a slip and fall that happened 10 years ago, or it's from some other reason. And the plaintiffs bear the burden of proof.
Are you telling me that the insurance company will take that stance if they have the chance?
Yes,
okay.
I am.
They do, unfortunately. واحدة من الأشياء اللي همينة جدا مهمة، هواية أشخاص من المرتبكين لو ما يعرفون يروحون للطبيب وراء الحادث وما يخبرون الطبيب بأنه هي كانت حادث سيارة. هسه حاليا أكثر يعني إذا تروح للعلاج لو المستشفى وتروح تسوي تشيكين، أول شيء يسألوك هل هي كانت حادث سيارة نعم أم لا، لأنه الدفع يكون غير شكل، يكون عن طريق عن الانشورنس. وإذا أنت لا رايح على فشي خاص هذا على الانشورنس الطبي مالتك، فلذلك لازم تكون كلش واضح بأنه تكون تخبر طبيبك بأنه أنت كنت بحادث سيارة. الشخص ما يصغر دا يكبر وأعراض تبين أكثر. مرات أنت يجوز كان عندك قبل أنت ألم ودا تتعالج عليه وهسه صار أسوأ. بالضبط. إحنا علينا لأن إحنا رافعين قضية ضد الإنشورنس، إحنا علينا لازم نثبت للإنشورنس الضرر هذا من الحادث السيارة، وهذا كله يجي من التقارير الطبية بأنه الطبيب يعرف أنت عندك حادث سيارة ويدون هالشي كتبه بالتقارير مالتك بأنه من صار الضرر وتأذيت أكثر، ويقدر يثبت هالأشياء من التقارير الطبية اللي قلناها التحاليل بأنه هو صار عنده هذا الضرر
زين.
زاد.
واحد مثلا كان عنده ألم سابق،
نعم.
عنده ألم سابق
مهم.
وصار عنده حادث،
نعم
هذا الألم زاد،
بالضبط.
هذا شلون مثلا حتى يثبت هذا الشيء بالنسبة
بالضبط.
There's actually a case directly on this point.
Yeah. So he just asked, okay, you were you had injury before the accident.
Okay.
or
And
you have pain. Or
pain. Yes.
Okay.
You're treating with a doctor before the
Yeah.
accident.
Sure.
Treating with a doctor before the accident,
Okay.
and then you got in an accident and
Yes.
it got worse.
Great question. So the question is that compensable? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Great question. I mean, the short answer is yes.
Yes.
Right. As long as the accident aggravated the injuries and it's affecting your ability to lead life in a different way. So, and because I want to really put a caveat on this. If you were this is sort of the general insurance way of putting it. If you're a couch potato before the accident, you do nothing but you sit there and you watch TV all day, every day. Okay.
Yes.
And then after the accident, you do nothing but sit there and watch TV all day, every day.
Only.
And there is no change in your life,
That's different.
then you may not be entitled to a claim, even if your pain is worse. Remember what I said earlier, pain alone is not sufficient. But if there's a change, let's say you used to go swimming, you played basketball,
And
you went to the
now you
park,
can't.
you played with your grandchildren, and now some of those things you can't do, now you may have a claim.
And honestly, sometimes it makes your claim even stronger.
Right.
If you have
Absolutely.
if you have MRIs before the accident, that show one thing,
That
but after the accident,
second MRI.
now it shows another thing.
exactly.
That, in my opinion, is directly related. I mean, just look. 2
Yeah.
months before the accident, this is what my back showed. 2 months after, this is what my back shows.
I mean,
Yes.
and I think that's compelling. I
How-
really
You
do.
have
how-
the dates.
How can you argue that's not
Right.
It's not an aggravation?
I think that makes it very hard for an insurance company to say, "Oh, it's all related to
Very
something
hard.
else." Yeah.
Okay, I have one problem. How I'm gonna translate?
aggravation.
No. What did you say? Potato
Couch
potato
potato.
couch
Couch
potato?
potato means someone
No,
who
I know.
has
I
limited
know.
activity.
There's no Arabic term for couch potato.
Ah, no, that's an
is.
English phrase.
There is, and it is.
Oh, there is.
Yes, it is.
شنو؟
واحد تنبل ما يريد
ترى
يشتغل.
قسم حتى
ما-
بالعربي ما يعرفون
ما
تنبل
يعرفون شنو
شنو.
تنبل.
Sahir looks a little
Kaslan.
confused.
كسلان. Yes.
Interesting.
I've heard that term actually before.
I had to.
So we're learning all sorts of new Arabic words all around here.
Yeah.
We have
So-
to.
It's not just me today.
No, we have to translate her Arabic.
Ah, I love it.
الأستاذ ساهر سأل سؤال، والسؤال جدا جدا يعني مهم همينه. الجواب بأنه يعتمد أهم شيء. صح أنت كنت متضرر قبل الحادث وهسه تضررت أكثر.
نعم.
أهم شيء لازم نثبت هل حياتك تغيرت من قبل الحادث إلى وراء الحادث. أنت صح يجوز كان عندك ضرر وكان عندك مثلا أنت مسوي MRI، تسوي MRI جديد يطلع باختلاف،
لا شيء.
هذا
عندك كيس.
عندك كيس.
خلاص.
كنت قبل تقدر تسبح، تقدر توقفين بالمطبخ الطبخين، تقدرين تشيلين اطفالك، تقدرين احفادك، تسوين اي شيء، باسكل رياضه، وهسه ما تقدر مثلا.
نعم.
شنو الاشياء اللي اهم شيء لازم نثبت بانه انت شنو الاشياء اللي قبل الحادث كنت تقدر تسويها وهسه ما تقدر تسويها. هاي اهم شيء.
نعم.
وأنا دائما اقول للزبائن مالتنا من اترجم لهم، اقول لهم اعتبروا كل شغله تقولوها تسوى $1000، فتعالوا بكل شيء اللي ببالكم جولوا.
Sahar, but the client has to tell us if they have pre-existing pain, right? Because if we're filling out an application for benefits and they ask if you ever had any prior back pain or prior pain and you say no, now the court's going to say you're a
that could be a
liar.
misrepresentation.
Misrepresentation.
And that's what I just
Yeah.
said. There should be the client should be very honest and
Absolutely.
open with the lawyer. مثل ما هسه أنا قلت يكون الزبون جدا صريح ويحكي الحقيقة كل شيء للمحامي حتى نعرف شلون نبني القضية بالطريقة الصحيحة.
Because handling a case that had no prior pain, we handle differently than a case that had prior pain. So if you don't tell us, it's probably not going to end up with a good result.
And actually, I've got an interesting example of this sort of thing. You know, I had a client who had respiratory issues actually before the accident. and she was on some medication to keep her oxygen levels high. After the accident, okay, she had to increase the amount of medication she was taking because her lungs were, well, she had bruising on her chest from the accident, and there was a airbag explosion. And so, you know, she believed that the accident may have caused some additional injury. And in fact, I got her pulmonologist records, and they specifically mentioned the motor vehicle accident because she told them about it. If she hadn't, it's very hard to draw any connection.
عندنا مثال جدا قوي بالمكتب هسه حاليا بأنه المصابة كانت على الأكسجين، ما تقدر تتنفس وحدها، فعدها أكسجين وكانت تاخذ أدوية خاصة حتى تساعدها بهالشيء. ورا الحادث زيدوا الأدوية مالتها الجرعة أقوى، لأنه انضربت بصدرها والإيرباك طق على صدرها، وطلبنا التقارير الطبية، وفعلا الطبيب قال من وراء الحادث زادت هالشيء. لو مو هي قايلت لنا بأنه هي عندها هذا الضرر ما كان نعرف، وكان يعني
قضية عادية
بالضبط كلش غير شكل.
صح.
بالحقيقة مرات صح أنت عندك ضرر وتتضرر مرة الأخرى تصير القضية بعد أقوى.
هيك.
نعم.
يعني مكان من طيب.
نعم.
أنت زاد عندك المرض أو
بالضبط.
زاد عندك الألم.
بالضبط.
صحيح.
Yes.
Okay, so my statistics show that treatment increases value after an accident, right?
Yes.
Is all treatment the same? Is 2 months of physical therapy the same as multiple surgeries after an accident?
No.
Yeah, the answer to that is definitely no. That's a really good point. We do have a lot of clients who will come in and say, hey, you know, I got a month of physical therapy. Isn't that great? And the answer is maybe, but maybe not, you know.
Might be great depending on what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, if they're looking for a small amount,
most of the time it's not what the client's looking for.
Right. And I think it's important to point out it's going to depend upon injuries, right? I mean, if you've got broken bones that require surgical intervention and you're going to need assistance around the house, you know, maybe 24-hour care. I mean, I think this is just the logical thing to think about, right? If you're the juror, right? If you're the one deciding how much money someone gets, okay? And you had 3 people. You have one person who is brain dead, okay, and will never recover. You have another person who did a month of physical therapy and then recovered, and you have another person who was not injured at all. I think it's pretty easy to say what's the order of who's getting more money in that, right? Exactly, the first one. And so is all treatment equal? Definitely not. And the more serious treatment that your doctors are going to recommend, and the more serious treatment that you go through with is obviously going to impact the value of the case because it's additional evidence of the impact on your life and the injuries that you sustained.
مثل ما تفضلنا بأنه وضحنا بأنه العلاج جدا مهم. بس مو كل علاج.
صح.
مو تتعالج شهرين فيزيكال ثيرابي مو نفسه إذا أنت تعالجت مثلا لمدة سنة. لو مثلا عندك ضربة أوبر، لو صار عندك عملية، كل شيء هاي يضيف إلى القضية مالتك. مثلا أكو هواية ورا 2-3 يقول أنا ضجت بعد ما أريد. اوكي ضجت شكل، واذا انت بعدك متضرر وتحتاج شكل اخر،
يعني انتم تقدرون انه تلحون عليه مثلا او
احنا ما نقدر نلح على اي احد. احنا بس ننصح.
النصيحه
we give advice that very important to keep going and getting medical attention
if they still are in pain.
Exactly. Yes.
And look, there's no perfect formula to this, right? What I'm discussing is the cases that I've seen over the last 7-8 years. You know, we've litigated over 2,000 cases, and I have statistics on, you know, what sort of
Absolutely.
treatment they've had and what we
Yes.
settled for. That's all I'm saying is
Yes.
there's no perfect formula.
No.
But from my cases, from what I've seen over litigating 2,000 cases, we do have more value in cases that, like you said, treat and depending on the treatment.
ماكو فشي محدد يقول اوكي انت اذا رحت هالقد تاخذ هالقد، لو رحت هالقد تاخذ هالقد. يعتمد بالضبط على انت المده اللي عندك مده العلاج، شنو نوع العلاج همينه كلش. تروح سنه للثيرابي وانت بعدك متضرر، يقولوا لك تعال شنو العلاج نسوي؟
ليش
ما طبت بالضبط، معناته اكو غير شيء، لازم تسوي غير تحاليل، لازم تسوي غير اشياء. ولا يقولوا لك سوري انت من انا جزء 10 سنين تروح الثيرابي وما يفيدك.
شيء instead of this.
بالضبط.
And just to be clear, I mean, if someone's recovered fully, that's great.
Yes.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Right? I mean,
for sure.
Obviously,
That's what we're all looking for, right?
That's what we want.
You want to get better.
We want the person to get better. But it's for those people who aren't recovering right away, who are like, you know what? I've been through it. I'm just going to stop, even though I'm still in pain. I'm in horrible pain every day.
I
I
want
can't
to stop.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes.
Right. Or maybe they're worried about medical bills because they're afraid it's not going to be covered or something like that, because they don't understand that, you know, their personal protection coverage will cover it. I mean, those types of things happen. And what we're trying to say is for those people who are still in pain, who need the treatment, they absolutely should continue to get it until they're feeling better.
And just like we were talking about settlement offers and things of that nature, if you need a second opinion on a surgery or something that's going to have that's big, I definitely suggest getting a second opinion.
Yeah, a medical opinion.
Medical opinion. Yes.
مثل ما قال المحامي جان بأنه إذا صرت زين بالعكس هو إحنا نريد الشخص يصير زين بالضبط، وإذا زين انتهى خلاص. بس إذا هو بعده مو زين وما يريد يتعالج، لا
هذه تفرق.
ننصحه بأنه يظل يروح وإذا عنده مثلا أوبر أو عمليات وخايف لو ما يعرف شو يسوي، ننصح من الزبون روح خذ يعني second opinion، روح خذ استشارة ثانوية.
لأن شخص يمل
بالضبط، مرات يمل، مرات يتعب، مرات تعب الألم يتعب
الألم يتعب
بالضبط.
And look, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no problem.
you know, I'm sorry. I'll let you finish, and I'll jump in. Sorry.
Actually, no. Like I said, مثل ما قلنا خلصنا. بس فلذلك إذا تحتاج إلى يعني لا إلى تروح إلى استشارة ثانية، احنا ننصح بهالشيء. روح إلى استشارة ثانية حتى تتأكد بأنه هل أنت صحيح تحتاج هالشيء لو لا.
Right.
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. So let's we have about 10 minutes left. It looks like. So let's jump to the pain and suffering part of your case. So as part of the bodily injury case, right? We have to show pain and suffering, and part of that is how your life changed after the accident. So this is huge.
Yes.
This is also very, very big. I just remembered what I was going to say actually when I interrupted you. I'll repeat myself, but what I was going to say was I'm not saying that I like how insurance companies value cases depending on, you know, treatment. Like I said, I don't like that. I really don't. I think it's not the best way of valuing cases. But what I think happens is I think the insurance companies have so many cases that this is how they kind of look at cases and put values on them. I have a lot of clients that are very injured and a lot of pain. They just don't seek the medical treatment that they need, and they end up with a lower value case in there that they're looking for, essentially. So I don't agree with how they value cases. Okay. But this is kind of what I've seen how, you know, what they do.
مثل ما تفضل المحامي بأنه مع الأسف الانشورنس بس تباوع على الطبابة. إيش قد سويتها؟ أكو هواية متضررين كلش، يعني طريقة حياتهم أو لو مالتهم ما عندهم سيارة، لو ما يقدرون يروحون يجون، لو لأي سبب من الأسباب مالتهم العلاج ما يكون زين، يخسرون هواية من القضية مالتهم لأسباب هم مو بيديهم. بس الانشورنس ما هلقد عندها قضايا هواية تباوع بس على الطبابة وانت شو مسوي مع الأسف.
Yeah. All right. So yes, back to the pain and suffering part of your case. So, you know, one of the biggest things that you're going to have to show in your case, if, you know, you're pursuing a bodily injury case against the at-fault driver, is how your life changed after the accident. You know, like tomorrow, like you were talking about, it's very important to a case, right? So if you know, if you're doing the same exact things that you were doing before the accident, after the accident, they're probably not going to put much value on the pain and suffering part of your case.
And by law, actually, in their defense, I mean, the plaintiff has to show a change in their lifestyle generally.
مثل ما قلنا بأنه الجزء الثاني من القضية بالعطل وضرر ضد اللي سبب الحادث، لازم تبين بأنه حياتك تغيرت من قبل الحادث إلى وراء الحادث، ومو بس تبينها يعني على ورق، لازم تثبت هالأشياء. وأكو هواية أشياء نقدر نبين إحنا مرات ما نفكر بيها. دائما أنصح المستمعين أول ما يبدي الحادث دائما تليفونك بالنوتس، لو عندك ورقة وقلم وخليها بالمالتك الأجندة، صور اكتب يومية. مثلا أنت فلان يوم ما قدرت تسوي شغلة، ورا شهر شهرين ورا أسبوع تنسى، ثاني يوم تنسى أنت شو مسوي. هنا ورا سنة ونص يجون يسألوك هذا السؤال أنت ناسي، ورا سنة ونص أنت شوية متحسن، صح لو مو صحيح؟
تنسى الألم.
Some of the clients I always say, please, as of day of accident, begin noting. On your phone, you have a notepad, you can note it, or you have an agenda, put it. Every day, what you are not able to do.
Right.
Because after a year and a half, when you get your dep, you forget all
100%.
that.
Yeah.
So this is very important to do so.
I mean, that's a good point, because you're living your daily life, and certain things are going to come up that you're not going to be able to do.
Exactly.
You might not remember them a year later, like you're saying, when the insurance company wants to depose you.
And you know, one of the things that we do is we provide clients logs for assistance that people are providing them, you know, and that shows a change in your life. I mean, if you were able to do your own cooking, cleaning, dishwashing, what have you before the accident, and then after the accident, as a result of those injuries, you can't do it anymore. I mean, that's a change in your life, right?
Yeah.
So.
واحدة من الأشياء اللي هي تغير حياتك بأنه مثل ما نقول إحنا يحصل $20 بالنهار للمساعدة البيتية. هاي أبسط دليل بأنه هو كان قبل الحادث يسوي هاي الأشياء، يقدر يغسل هدومه بإيده، يقدر يذبح الزبالة، يطبخ، هسه ما يقدر بالضبط. وإحنا همنا عندنا هواية يعني طرق، مو طرق بس، أشياء واحد ينساها. خاصة الأم والبيت، حتى الأب والبيت، اكو أشياء هو يسويها هو يعني عفوية بس أنت متى ما واقف يعني بهالنقطة ومفكر بيها. بالضبط.
بس من يصير الحادث ويصير الألم ويصير هالقضايا.
صحيح.
طبعا باقي لنا حوالي دقيقتين.
Okay, we have 2 minutes.
So we can wrap up the subject then.
Okay.
The last thing I was going to talk about was, you know, one of the biggest things for me, and you know, I take very good pride in this, is working up the bodily injury case, adding the excess medical and wage loss.
Yes.
You know, this is how I've gotten a lot of cases from, you know, a very small value to a very large value.
Yeah.
And essentially what happens, sorry to cut you off, John,
no,
but
please.
essentially what happens is, you know, your PIP policy will pay your wage loss for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
If you're disabled beyond that point, you can claim any wage loss that you're having, you know, after 3 years. Let's say you're permanently disabled and you're 50 years old, you have 20 more years of work.
Right.
You can claim essentially 20 whole years of wage loss against the at-fault driver, which can be, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can make a claim for.
النقطة الأخيرة وهي آخر شيء للموضوع هذا كله، يسموها access medical و access wage loss. الأكسس بأنه العلاج الإضافي والرواتب الإضافية. الميشيغان تقدر تاخذ رواتب إلى 3 سنين عن طريق الانشورنس مالتك، بس إذا أنت عمرك 50 سنة وبعدك عندك 15 سنة لازم تشتغل، وأنت ما تقدر، لا بعدك، بس إلك حق تاخذ هاي ال 15 سنة الأخرى عن طريق العطل وضرر، حتى وتكبر قضيتك من صغيرة إلى أكبر، بأنه تاخذ هاي من العطل وضرر همينة.
And just to caveat, or just to add to that very quickly, final point, you know, excess economics includes any excess medical that isn't paid beyond the policy limits, or any excess services that are provided beyond the policy limits. because there are policies now, as we've talked about in prior shows, that have a limit on the recovery.
Yeah.
Thank
So,
you Mr.
Thank you.
Lawrence. Thank you Mr. John.
Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا.
أهلا
ست
وسهلا.
تمارا. مستمعينا الأكارم، مشاهدينا الأعزاء، كنا مع المحامي لورنس قاجي والمحامي جان شرودر وأيضا العزيزة تمارا. فنلتقيكم إن شاء الله في الأسبوع القادم وحلقة جديدة إن شاء الله.